Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Alex Crescioni, and welcome to Home is Where the Dark Is. So I made it to 40 years old, and it's been crazy life in music. And I know a lot of you that are following this channel might be in the music industry, or a musician, a recording artist, or pursuing music, you're playing an instrument. And I want to say thank you to all of you for following the channel, and I hope any of the previous videos I've posted have been informative to you. And in this episode, I want to get into some topics that might help you in the future with your music career. I've learned a hell of a lot in the past 20 years. I got out of college, I got out of music school about, about 20 years ago now. So it's been a wild ride ever since. And the first thing I want to tell you that I've learned is that your journey is not going to be anything like what you hoped it would be. It could be worse, it could be much greater, but it's not going to pan out exactly as you have envisioned it in your mind. For a small percentage of people, maybe things have gone perfectly, but for the majority of us, things go pretty off the rails. Some of the things that I've really come to realize in the past 20 years of being in music, pursuing the passion of making records, writing songs, playing in bands, finding love, being in relationships. As much experience as I have in music, I also have with dating and being in a relationship. And these things go hand in hand. And I don't know if there's a lot of people that talk about this exact topic of being involved in music and how that interweaves with your relationship and how the two go hand in hand. And these things really, really matter. Who we choose to spend our life with means everything. And this has been a very hard lesson that I've had to learn in the past 20 years. So yeah, I'm 40. I'm single. This hasn't been the longest amount of time I've been single in my life, but in a while. So I would say I've been single about maybe 14 months now, a little over a year. And it was hard at first, but now I think this is exactly what I needed at this point in my life. It's really helped me with introspection and a deeper meaning and a deeper searching for peace with oneself. So it's been a great learning experience. And if you're going through hard times in your music career, and maybe you haven't had the greatest luck with relationships, or you're going through a rough patch in your relationship now, and you're in a band, or you're an artist, or maybe your partner is in a band or is pursuing music, and these two things separately are extremely difficult tasks, extremely difficult things to accomplish in life in general. Like a successful marriage or relationship alone is extremely difficult, and the odds of that going well aren't great. It's a little over 50% of people, marriages end in divorce, and that's pretty common knowledge. So the odds are already not in your favor. And the odds of making it or being extremely successful in music are even worse. So you have these two, things are already set up against you, like from the very beginning. So I see a lot of people, they're trying to do both of these things at the same time. They're trying to make it, whatever that means, in music, and they want to have, the fairy tale relationship or the fairy tale marriage. And it's extremely, extremely difficult. So from my experience, okay, let me go back a little bit here. I've always loved the idea of love, which it may sound weird to say. If people that know me on a more personal level, it might make sense to you. But I've always enjoyed the idea of having, a life partner, that special someone. I think most people do. And it's mainly because, I've seen, my parents have stayed together their whole marriage and they're still together. And I've always, that's been my example growing up. So I think a part of me have always wanted to match that. And I've been thinking a lot about this. And I do think deep down it is what I really want, but I've put some time into thinking about, is it something I really, really want, or is it just because that's what I've seen? And I know it's not the norm. I know most of the people I know, their parents aren't together, or they've separated and got back together, or I know very few people that their parents are still together, which is unfortunate, but it's the reality. So anyway, trying to navigate these waters in music and in love is just extremely complex. And I think I've had a hard time of giving myself some grace with that because, when we get into these relationships, depending on how old we are, you're trying to date in your 20s and it's like a nightmare, and I think it's because of, my specific generation, when I was growing up, this is when the internet was just starting. And I was in my early to late teens, having a computer, having the internet, having AOL, and that opened the floodgates to instant messaging, and then MySpace was huge, and then Facebook, and now we have everything that we have now. But I think for our generation, it was like right on the cusp of the the end times for relationships and for the traditional type of relationship, the gender roles and the what's okay and what's not okay and the expectations of, just having a healthy relationship. So yeah, I was born in '86, so I'm a millennial. So most of my childhood, I didn't have, there weren't cell phones. I actually remember days going out and playing with my friends, like skateboarding, just fucking around, going to the park, just hanging out and playing basketball, doing all those really wholesome, great feeling activities with your friends, and having that experience, which, I really cherish that because I remember in those days, like, things were just so much easier. It was, happiness was just within grasp. It was just like things are so simple and easy, and you knew who your friends were, and you had more friends, and things weren't so superficial, like all about money and status and all this bullshit that we deal with now. But I remember those days, and they were great. And going into my teens and late teens, it was internet, AOL, and then coming out of high school, going into college, things are starting to get a bit more crazy. But I do remember the days of, the simpler life. And I really do think that as great as social media is, and as great as the internet is, and AI and all this new technology that we are being pummeled with right now, as great as all this technology is, I do think it has caused serious, serious problems for humans, for our relationships, especially with men and women trying to start families, trying to just get along, just enjoy each other's company anymore. And it's extremely challenging because the expectations now are just insane. Um, that's like a whole nother topic, a whole nother video. But what I'm saying is I do remember the days of when things were simpler, and you know, people actually just wanted to get to know you, to be your friend, and that was it. It's not like, oh, what can I get from this person? What status can I gain? What value? All this bullshit now. It's like value, value, value. It's like, what value? Blah, blah, blah. High value man, high value woman, all this crap. That's the world we live in now. But yeah, I've always loved the idea of having your special someone, and it's what I thought I wanted. I really did, and I really pushed for it for many years, for the past 20 years. So I've had a handful of relationships. I would say I'm more of a serial monogamist. I really like being in relationships. I don't like, I had my period of time when I, messed around a lot in my 20s, but I got it all out of my system, and that is not anything I'm interested in anymore. It's not the kind of person that I feel like I am, the kind of person that I align with internally. And I know some people, like, they do the whole, the swingers thing, the open relationships thing into their, 30s, 40s, 50s. Some people, that's just how they want to live their life, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's not the kind of life that I'm into. And I learned that pretty early on. So I always wanted to have my person, Some of the harsh realizations that I've learned the hard way in the past, I would say probably in the past 15 years, is that, a lot of the time we connect to people not because of who they truly are. And when we're young, for men, it's about looks, it's about, sex, it's about that fantasy, and I'm guilty of this. Some of the first few girls I dated, and when you're young, like, your brain isn't developed. Like, you don't really know anything. Like, you don't know who you are. You don't know what you want. You just are acting impulsively, and yeah, we date based off of looks, and it's just the reality. And now I see why people would fall into that trap, but I feel like now it's more about, if I were to ever date again or be in a serious relationship again, or even ever think about marriage, which is probably not in the cards for me at this point, which is okay, which I've come to terms with that. Because that's a whole other topic, like, that is a huge risk for men these days. It's just, things aren't the same. Women are, at least the women that I've come in contact with in the past, 10 years, and all the shit you see on the internet, like, it's all about money. It's all about value. What value can you bring them? What status will they gain? What assets, what XYZ will they gain from being with you? And it's unfortunate, but I've met quite a few women like that, and they just think it's just like their default. So I struggled for many years in relationships, in and out. Some of them last a year, 2 years, 3. My last was almost 5. So, I will give myself credit for at least one thing, is like, I am pretty resilient, like, especially in music. Like, you have to be so resilient, but every time I get knocked back down, I'll try again, but I've learned that, you have to really give yourself time to recover, give yourself time to think about what you've learned and how to move forward. And there are similarities between relationships and, like, big blows in your career, whether it be music or whatever, but sometimes you get hit so hard, and it's really, it's debilitating, and it's extremely hard to get back up because you think there's no way to recover and there's no way you can move forward because it was so painful. Whether you lost a lot of money in business, you got hit really hard, or your husband or wife left you out of the blue, and even if it isn't out of the blue, it's just like they've given up on the relationship. You're left trying to pick up the pieces. I've learned that you really have to be okay with losing everything and still move forward. Because honestly, music has always been there for me, but people that I thought would always be there for me have not been there. And it's a harsh reality, but it's the truth. And a lot of these people, that you've met in your life that say they love you, it's pretty easy to say, but when things get hard, when life throws all kinds of unimaginable circumstances at you, and then the relationship doesn't suit them anymore, the relationship becomes too difficult, or they actually have to start putting in effort, then all of a sudden, abandon ship. So I've dealt with this before, and I've been that person that has left relationships for completely different reasons. But I also think there are times when if something is just so toxic, or you learn over time that there is just no compatibility anymore. And that's another thing. People grow apart. People change. That's another reason why it's so hard to stay in a relationship, a healthy relationship, for many, many years, is because we change. And I think a lot of really creative, ambitious, driven people, we go through all kinds of shifts and phases, and we shed our skin and we go through transformations a lot, often. And I think a lot of creative people do, and I definitely have. And you might not recognize yourself 5 years from now, or maybe, I've gone through huge changes in the last 2 to 3 years, and I look back and I'm like, wow, I'm nothing like that anymore. And it's really hard to survive that. If someone chooses to be with you, they always say, oh, well, you have to accept your person for who they are today. And that's true. But as we grow and as we change, as we evolve, depending on how that goes, that might not be what your partner signed up for. And that's completely okay. It just depends on how much do you love that person to want to make it work. And unfortunately for me, it just there hasn't been enough love there for some of these people to want to stay. And like I said, I've left relationships as well that just weren't right. And it's a really hard call to make when you're trying to navigate these waters, especially while you're making music or while you're trying to make a living from your art. It makes everything like a million times harder because you have someone that you're trying to take care of, you're trying to love and support, depending on the conditions of your relationship. If you're married and you're the primary breadwinner and your husband or wife relies on you for the income, and you're trying to, maybe you feel trapped in your 9 to 5 and you want to pursue music or you want to pursue acting, and this 9 to 5 job, this corporate job, is killing you inside. It's killing you, and it is no longer sustainable mentally. And I know so many people that, a lot of people won't talk about this or say it out loud, but you can feel it around them. You can feel it around these people. Like they're dying inside. They're screaming inside because they feel trapped in a dead end job, but they can't get out of it. They're afraid to even have the conversation with their spouse about, hey, you know what? I'm losing my mind here. I need to pursue my passions. I need to do whatever I can to make this transition happen. And I need your support. But the problem is, a lot of people, like, they're scared to even have the conversation because they know that their spouse relies on them for the majority or all of the income in the household. And it's another very, very, very difficult thing to try and make work. So if you're a musician and you're trying to make things work, you're trying to, you really, really care about this. You really, really care about your art, and you want this to be your life's mission, your life's calling. And maybe you've been working at it for many years. Maybe it's something you've dabbled with and you're trying to make the transition. But the only way you're going to even have a chance of it happening is if your partner is on board 100%. And that's really hard. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, your partner can be the death of you. The only way that you can make your dreams come true is if you give it 110% and you put your all into it. And if your partner isn't on board with that, you have to let them go. Or you have to decide, you have to make the decision. You have to be like, okay, I love my person so much that I'm going to give up my dreams to continue to take care of this person. And you have to be able to live with that forever. Like, you have to be able to live with that, and you can't hold it against them. You just have to make the decision, and that's a really hard decision to make. It's like, well, I have to let go. I have to let go of this person because I literally I cannot sit here in this dead-end, miserable job for my entire life, knowing that I chickened out. I never tried to make my life what I've always wanted it to be: an artist, a musician, an actor, whatever it may be. So you have to be willing to sacrifice everything for it. Oftentimes it just doesn't work out through relationships. Like, you have to go into it knowing that, like, truthfully, every long-term relationship that I've been in, I went into it with the best of intentions, with love. Like, I really want to make this work, but none of them worked, and that's okay. But I know I went into them with the best intentions. And, sometimes the people that I thought I knew, I didn't at all. And sometimes they were exactly who I thought they were, but for whatever reason, just the timing was off, and just the expectations shifted. And timing is a big factor as well, because there have been one or two people that I think if I had met at a different point in my life, things could have worked. And maybe you've experienced that as well. It's like, if we met like 5 years later when things were a little bit more stable, or if we met maybe 5 years earlier when this situation was better, like, there's all these factors, but you can't think that way because, it's, you don't want to drive yourself crazy with that kind of thought, which I'm guilty of. The main things to really look out for is, this is going to be an extremely, extremely rocky road, extremely treacherous. And that's another thing that you'll learn about the long game of music, is that it seems that people think that the longer you do it and the more people you know, or the more connections you have, the more you're surrounded with, you're constantly surrounded with beautiful, loving, kind people, and, you're just flooded with love. And that's true in a way, but most of the time it's pretty lonely, even when you're in a relationship. Let's talk about a daily routine, you know? If you're doing music full time, you're either gone, you're on tour, you're in the studio, or if you have a home studio, you're working all the time. And that's another huge issue with relationships is, you know, that's why I can't fuck around at all right now with how they say, I can't fuck around with modern women. I wish it wasn't the case. I honestly, I hate this about what the internet and social media and TikTok has done to the mentality of a lot of these girls is they think they want it all. You know, they want all of your time, they want all of your money, but they don't realize, look, all these people that are really successful, they're gone because they're in the studio, they're on tour, they're at the office, they're on the job site, they're busting their ass making all that money that you feel so entitled to. And then you give a shit for, oh, well, you're always at the studio, you're always gone, you're always working. Well, yeah, that's what it takes. Unless, unless you've inherited a bunch of wealth or you're, trust fund kid or whatever, you just have money. Yeah, that's another huge issue. And another reason why a lot of relationships and marriages fail, because someone isn't getting enough attention. But you want that lifestyle. You want that larger than life lifestyle. You want that fame. You want the status. You want the success. You want the money. But the price to pay for that is exponential. I think some women are cool with it. They understand, yeah, you know what? He's going to be gone a lot most of the time, but I'm comfortable. But is that really the kind of person you want to be? I couldn't live with myself. If I was a woman, there's no way I would be comfortable with that. Just let me find the richest, most attractive dude that I can land and just leech off of his wealth and sit around and do whatever the fuck I want all day. Really? That's how you want to live your life? I'm sorry, but I can't even get on the same page with you in that. And there's no freaking way at this point in my life I would ever entertain someone with that mentality. Because I understand the struggle of trying to bring your life's vision to fruition in business, in making connections, in building relationships, in literally trying to be the best version of yourself. It takes so much time, it takes so much attention and effort and money. That's another thing, you have to invest in yourself. With music, I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into myself as an artist, as a musician. I have a studio here at Sound City. I've been here for over 10 years, and it costs a lot of money. And it's not just, there's so many expenses, and it's not at all what it seems. Unless if you're in the top 1%, a lot of these people, they're doing really, really well, but they still have problems. They still have extremely challenging problems. It's the more money you make, the more issues you have. It's true. It's the more stress, the more pressure you have. If you're in music and if you're, coming up on you're in your 30s, maybe you're in your 40s, even in your 50s, and you're still struggling, and all of your relationships have failed, or you're struggling in your relationship now, and it just seems like you're beating your head against the freaking wall constantly. We've all been there. So I think the most important thing to know is this life of music and love and trying to be the best version of ourselves. It just takes daily work and daily introspection and daily sacrifice. The most important thing is to believe in yourself. And I think deep down we all know what we really want, but it's hard to admit it to ourselves, or it's hard to actually act out on it. And I think the sooner you can just accept, like, no, this is who I am and this is what I'm gonna do, and just stop fighting it, and the people that are meant to be with you on your journey, they will show up and they will support you. You just have to trust yourself, and that's something I've been learning slowly how to do better at. You know, I've always had a strong gut feeling that, you know, music is worth suffering for. Making art is worth suffering for. And we have to live and die by our decisions. And we have to live and die by our vision.